It was amazing. So
Now you
frustrating.
leave people in total suspense. They won't know.
If I find it, I'll bring it up. But I was trying to
It's an
diagnose
amazing
this
thing.
thing. Yeah, I'll blog it. Diagnose problems. But yeah, to Damien's point, there's so much. Ah, there it is.
What? Is somebody rocking out? What is happening?
What's
What?
wrong? What?
Oh, no, sorry.
Are you okay?
There's an ad. Sorry. So I have the thing going so I can see the chat.
Surfing
and then,
somewhere you shouldn't be surfing?
No, there's the video accompanying the chat
Sure.
window. Started playing an unboxing of form.
Likely story.
All right. Okay, so check this out. Check this out. I'm taking over the first part of the conversation. All right.
This is the pre-show, right?
This is the pre-show. Okay, so here's my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, so I've been having trouble with my blood sugar application using up CPU that was affecting my podcast and my other apps.
Right.
Okay, so I go to the app service. I click diagnose and solve problems on the app service, not the plan.
So meta point here. Is your health like directly related to how well you can run your Azure site?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yes. I'm not just a customer. I'm also a client or whatever. I don't know. I don't just work at Microsoft, but yeah, if Azure goes down, I feel gross when I wake up. That's pretty much how it goes. Okay. So you click on that. This is all like stuff people haven't seen before. Now, check this out. You can look here and you can see your requests, right? You can see your availability, right? You can see your platform availability the last couple of days has been great, 100%. Huh. Here is my app was down. You see my app availability was still. Yep. These are deployments, or they are restarts of my app. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now down here,
does platform represent app service? You think?
The green one is platform availability, meaning was app service up.
It is. Okay.
The blue one
is your app.
Is my app.
Okay.
Okay. And then for each of these moments when it was down,
yes,
you can see why it was down.
Wait, how did you get to this thing?
Go to app service.
My voice went really high there.
Go to app service.
Go to app service.
Go to the app service. Click on diagnose and solve problems.
Okay.
Okay. Under health.
But you didn't get that on the other one. Is this like A/B tested or something?
No. This is on app service, not app service plan.
Oh, on an individual site.
On an individual site. Okay.
I've never seen this.
Dude, you guys, you all guys and gals who are listening to the show here, I know Azure sucked a couple years ago. Like, I get that. It's really cool now. The tools that they are giving you for free are bananas. Okay, so check it out. You come down to the bottom. You click on here where it says Freb logs analysis. Right, it'll tell you when 500s happen.
So yeah, Freb logs are the IIS failed request tracing.
Exactly. So here's my 500s. Okay.
Okay.
And it says looks like an issue with your application code. Now I haven't App Insights this code yet.
Yeah.
But I could. Now this is what's significant. Look at this. High memory usage was detected on instance. That is the instance of my server name. My server name. But it's my server name because I'm using a standard, right?
Yeah.
During this period, the site using the most memory was Hansel Sugars, which used 9%. Now watch this. Ready for your brain to explode, Damien?
Okay.
Watch. Wait for it.
Look.
What? Those are all the sites.
Get out.
Including Kudu. Look at Kudu showed up there. See how my Kudu site for Hansel Sugars is using up a lot of memory?
Wait. I'm still trying to find the Kudu site.
Top, second one.
Oh, it says Kudu in square braces. Okay.
See, my Kudu site was actually using a non-trivial amount of memory.
That's awesome.
Isn't that cool? So you can see what's using memory and what's not. Okay. Very nice. Then this whole section is brilliant. So then you go to troubleshoot and you can say, oh, what's wrong? My app is slow. And they'll go and say that. Now check this out. This is a secret area that no one ever uses, but it's powerful. Here's the deal. I have a Node app with a memory leak.
Yep.
Okay, that's a fact. Now, what I'm going to do and again, this is the ASP.NET community stand-up, not the Node one, but bear with me. It all applies. Okay, I am going to do this, where I'm going to make a secret folder called dump me.
Okay.
And then when I dump it, I will go and take a heap snapshot. and then you will load that into Chrome and then do time over time heap snapshots and then look and see what the leak is.
So hang on, you've added an endpoint to your site that you can hit that creates a dump of your app.
Yes.
This is a public endpoint on
security through obscurity.
It's not that obscure anymore.
No, here, I'll fix it like this. There you go. No one will know.
Yeah.
And that literally takes a dump of the running.
But not a process dump, an internal V8 heap dump.
A V8 heap dump. Okay.
It's different from a dump.
Then you can load that into some Node heap analyzer.
No, then you literally load it into Chrome. Node people use this stuff with Chrome. Okay.
I see.
Here's the part. Now, that's separate from the fact that I still need the app to run.
Okay.
Now, look at this. Advanced application restart.
Yes.
Okay, this is so bad. Look, this is me choosing to restart my app whenever I feel like it.
Okay. I mean, that's good. It's just kicking the server.
Right.
In some
So
time, right?
it's basically, I know for a fact that I have a memory leak, and I'm going to go and restart this thing.
Sure.
To bring it back. I just think like it's 20 years ago when we didn't know what was wrong with an app on IIS.
Oh, this lets you, okay, specifically what this pane lets you do other than the normal restart.
Restarts IIS.
No, you can do a specific instance.
Yeah.
Whereas on the normal overview pane of any app service site, if you hit restart, it restarts all instances if you're running on multiple servers. Yeah. This one lets you tick the instance on a specific server.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's why it's advanced. Okay.
So then there's this metrics per instance apps. We talked about this. I only have one instance, but this lets me go and see the perf counters. Right. So I can go down in here and see how hard this machine's working, right, over time. Like here's 24 hours. Okay. That is less interesting. I blogged about this before than metrics per instance app service plan, which you're interested in, Damien.
Yes.
Whereby, let's look at the last 5 days. Okay, see this right here? See this bump? This is growing, 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 and then it dropped. That's because yesterday I moved over to a new version of Node. I went from a really old version of Node, which was 0.1 to like 6.10.
Okay.
See that? Look at that.
Nice.
So the memory leak still exists, you can see, but somehow it's better and their internal garbage collector is eventually getting around to it. But what's nice about this is I've got 21 sites in my site service plan. I can go like this, see them all working together, and then bring up them on the chart here. And the other thing that's worth pointing out is some of these are Node sites, some of these are static sites, some of these are ASP.NET sites.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty hot.
Wow.
All right. Cool. John. Oh, hello everyone.
Hi.
We didn't see you there. This is the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up.
Correct.
You're all lovely, lovely people.
Where we debug Node apps.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Am I on? Yes.
Hello.
Can I share my items before I forget what they are?
Please.
Okay. There's some good ones.
So smooth.
All right. Yeah, well, maybe some transition music would be good.
John loves community.
Okay, Andrew Locke. So this one's cool. This is re-executing middleware pipeline with the status code pages middleware. So what I really like about this is he's got a diagram which shows what the problem is, which is when you access something with
diagrams.
Yeah, look at that. And I don't know.
And a book available, by the way.
Yeah.
Andrew's got a book.
Oh, good. Yes.
We should make sure we advertise that at the beginning.
Okay. So the problem here is that normally if you hit like an error, like 500 error on your server, what actually is happening is you're getting a 302 to your error status code page. So you end up with a 200 status code, right? And so what he's showing here is the using status code pages middleware to serve the actual original status, or the actual HTTP error. So that is pretty cool. That's using the re-execute for the pipeline. Cool. Shane Boyer here. He's showing an issue for, I wasn't aware of this. I guess with Project.json, you could have documentation files that would copy to your output during build or publish process, and that's not available He shows a simple way to set that up using MS Build, so you can get the same behavior there.
So what do you mean it's not available?
That's, let me see. He says documentation file is no longer automatic.
Lost your audio.
John? We
John.
lost him entirely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, can you chat him? He's gone entirely.
I see myself.
No, there you are.
You've gone completely black.
My screen?
You were
Should I?
talking. Move your mouse. Nope. Okay, you're back. You were saying documentation file is no longer copied to the output folder. That is a problem. Isn't there a way to mark it as copy?
Of course there is. I feel like I'm missing some context. Like,
well, this individual is saying that
this is Shane Boyer.
This is Shane Boyer.
Yeah.
Okay, Shane is saying
one of our docs people. Well, now he's an evangelist, I think. But yeah, one of undocumented change company projects with the documentation file. What is that? What's documentation file?
Honestly, I figured you would go like, oh yeah, that thing, and then no more because.
Ah, dear.
So honestly, yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, you can obviously it's MS Build. You can make anything copy anyway.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's a good point. And
I'm not quite sure what you meant by it doesn't work anymore.
Well, I guess that I guess that it automatically used to before, and now you need to go in and say copy.
Everything was composed through Project JSON before. We didn't do anything like that automatically.
All right, let's pretend this never happened.
Okay.
So Tyler Rhodes writing about writing a blog engine in ASP.NET Core. This one's pretty cool because he kind of just spells out like, here's what I thought I would try, here's what I learned. He explains stuff along the way of here's how I did this, and there's some things where he's like, I thought this would work, but I ended up doing this. So it's nice that he's documenting his learning process here. So for instance, here he's saying I was doing querying incorrectly. So explains what he learned there. So pretty helpful as a learning experience.
Cool.
This guy James has some JSON.NET thing. Never heard of it, but so anyhow, the big thing on this 10.0 release is async support. So that is a big deal. Yeah. But also then performance. There's some nice performance things and a ton of other changes here. So.
Been waiting for that one.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Steve Desmond, and he is writing about benchmark.net. So he took benchmark.net and he's using it to compare a bunch of mocking libraries. And as you can guess, it depends what you're doing. So some are optimized for different things. When you look at some, you'll see that, for instance, like and substitute is faster for a few of these. When you get to some other cases, you'll see that mock or mock-you or however you say it is faster, right? So, but interesting to see. And so he's got this kind of setup. You may want to use this for your own tests of mocking frameworks. Steve Gordon. So here I called out his previous one. He's done this very in-depth series. So this is actually part 3. He's done parts 1, 2, and 3. So this is what happens when you call use MVC. 6 little letters that do quite a bit. So he's explaining all the stuff that's happening under the hood. I think things like these are fascinating to get kind of an appreciation of what's happening, and then also to know when you need to go in and customize or change something, what is actually happening under the hood there. Very cool. This is from Martin, and I previously called out a middleware that he did that is automatically requesting updated certificates from Let's Encrypt. So here, this is the actual project he's building this out in, and this is using React Redux Webpack with .NET Core. So this is a very in-depth post. He's got some cool diagrams. He's got lots of code. So very, very interesting post here. Okay, this is from Chad, and he's writing about building and debugging .NET new templating engine in Visual Studio. So people are excited looking at the new .NET New, .NET New 3, and what you can do there. So he's actually building and debugging it locally. That's cool. Mohammed Rehan Saeed, who always has the coolest pictures here. So here he's talking about .NET New feature selection. So deciding which features you would like to use when you're creating your own .NET New things. So that is very cool. Tim, writing about running ASP.NET Core 2.0 beta on Raspberry Pi 3. So that's kind of neat. Always fun to see this stuff going on Raspberry. Yeah. Sayed, he's got
by
one.
the way, just as a point of note, in a couple weeks, I'll have a podcast up with Adi Avivi from Hibernating Rhinos about how they got RavenDB doing like tens of thousands of requests
nice.
with Core on Raspberry Pi.
Nice.
Whoa.
Raspberry Pi becoming more and more clearly what you should be putting into production. Why use Azure when you can use an array of $35 credit cards?
Yes. Yep. Okay, so Sayed has a middleware for enforcing HTTPS with strict transport security. That's cool. This is Lucas. This was one that you forwarded over, Scott. This is .NET Core Tour. So if you're in Poland, be sure to check this out. Exciting. Hisham, so previously I showed off the Yes SQL thing. So that is that is something that Sebastian set up and talked about at the Orchard conference, and so Hisham's been digging into that. So that's, this is kind of a NoSQL with SQL abilities, and so that's and so he's basically building an API on top of it, so it looks similar to EF Core. So he ends up, programming in a way that looks a lot like EF Core on top of Yes SQL. So this is an interesting one from Simon. The idea here is basically it is query first, and the idea is that you are writing a query. So you write like a select query, and then it will generate code for you that generates a POCO to access the output. So here it's creating the select star from customers, and then it's going to generate this POCO that is an actual customer object. So pretty neat. And so he's got a Visual Studio extension for that.
So the query is the shape, the projection that comes out of the query is the shape of the POCO that you want. So you write the query first. That presents that expresses the projection of the POCO you want out of the other side of it. So you say select star from customers, and then that gives you the shape of a customer object, and then you get that POCO. Cool.
Or it could be a join or whatever, right? So,
fancy.
Yeah, pretty cool. And so here he's also got a 10-minute video to kind of go walk through that as well. This is Fanny Reinders. He's writing about implementing REST in ASP.NET Core, and he kind of goes with the hardcore REST, like talking about the actual Roy Fielding, what is a REST, and how does that relate to ASP.NET Core. So here he's got a video and speaker deck slides showing that. And here's Chad Tolkien. He's got a config explorer for ASP.NET Core. So the neat thing with this is, you just app use config explorer, and then you can actually walk through your config. So it dumps out your config. So pretty handy in terms of, local debugging, understanding what your config settings are. And finally, my new homepage, which is whydosdamianwear2watches.com.
Oh, lordy.
There you go.
Someone beat me to it.
That is special.
Yep.
There you go.
Why does Damien wear 2 watches? I told you that did I tell you I got the last band standing?
Yeah, I thought you were going to put it on a plinth.
I'm just saying. Like, that's how normal people.
That's what I had.
Mine's busted.
And you still, when I used to wear them on the same wrist, you used to give me hell about that.
Mine's right here. It's like it still sometimes works, and I like to wear it when I jog. But
John, you forgot the biggest community link of the last week, all completely. You just didn't show it.
Shameful.
System.ben.
Oh,
System.ben, people.
Well, that's not strictly ASP.NET, but yeah, that's true.
It surely is.
Yeah,
it's both. It is both secure and fast. It is.
Why don't you walk us through System.ben and how important it is?
Well, okay, let me do that.
No, I want Damien to do it because you've lost the privilege.
Okay.
So Ben put up the most powerful, the most fast, the most secure web code available. Works everywhere. It's got amazing requests per second. And when you look at the commits for the original initial commit of System.ben, here's your git ignore, right? There's your license, very generous MIT license. And that was it.
And a README, yeah, sure.
That was it. It was a nothing. The best part though is people are coming in and adding to system.ben contribution guidelines, Gitter chat, all the important stuff that one needs for an application that has nothing.
Well, and the great thing too is look at the issues. And
yeah, there's a ton of issues. It's insecure, source files, it's layered incorrectly, allocating a new Ben is slow. So it's pretty. That's fantastic.
And
the project still active. Why is there no Silverlight version?
The great thing too is Ben is actually putting some effort into this, and he's.
No, it's awful. There's pull requests too.
I've had several closed. Look how many are closed. Look at all the closed.
Oh my goodness!
Oh gosh, look at that! Brilliant.
Isn't that amazing?
Use words. Fantastic. Yeah. Check it out. Special.
So we can laugh at ourselves. The wider community.
It's lovely.
Oh dear.
All right. I apologize if you guys can hear my kids screaming outside. It is.
We can't. No.
Oh.
Is it sunny?
It is not only sunny. It's spring break. Ooh.
Oh.
Did I show you what I got recently? Did I show you my lightsaber already?
No.
Hang on. I went to a conference recently and they gave me a present. They gave me a .NET themed lightsaber.
What? Okay. They gave you a present? That's not plastic. Did you declare that?
I will have to declare this.
That looks like substantial.
It's somewhat substantial.
Oh my goodness. Who made that?
It's .NET themed. It's made by I think it's like Saberforge. I'll get all the details and I'll advertise for them later. Here's the best. God. And it goes wah wah wah. It's really, so here, check this out. See this top part where the light is? This is a Mace Windu themed saber.
Yeah, this purple one, right?
Look, you pull this out. I just figured this out because I'm not a saber expert. Okay, there's the dilithium core or whatever. It's just
Kyber crystals.
Kyber guy, like
stop mixing your sci-fi.
I completed my sci-fi. You see my sonic screwdriver that I got from? It's pretty practical.
Fix it with the sonic screwdriver.
So there's your
wow, dude.
Yeah.
I can't hear it.
The children are not allowed to touch it. So
does it make a noise? I can't hear it.
You should have convinced your kids that it's actually real. That would have been so awesome. You know, like actually cut something that was hanging by a thread.
I think it may have been damaged. I think it may have actually been damaged in delivery because I feel it should be louder.
Oh, really? Well, you're a hacker. You can pull it apart. You're a maker.
Sound in there.
Pull it apart. And
I don't want the kyber crystal to burn me.
Marches for makers, Scott.
Get your multimeter out. Figure it out. That's pretty cool.
Heinrich just said something mean to me. He said, "Isn't Scott on vacation half the time?" I rarely take a vacation, and even right now I'm on vacation, which is really sad.
That's part of the joke, is we'll always say so-and-so is on vacation, and they're actually
because someone who owns the .NET Foundation needs to get our .NET Foundation website up so that we can stand up over there.
Are you on vacation right now?
I am, in fact, right now on vacation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
No, you're not. You don't care.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. There are some questions we should answer. I don't have any particularly.
By the way, I looked into using user voice, and that's kind of a no-go. It's expensive. So yeah, I thought we could do some free thing, but they discontinued their free thing. But I will continue to look into that.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. We could just extend the website to support posting questions.
Will you accept a pull request to do that?
No, because I'm a terrible open source person, and I hate going through people's pull requests. I just rather write the code myself.
That explains so much about open source Microsoft.
I don't accept the pull request. I'm not the engineering manager. I don't make those calls. All right, but to live ASP.NET I do because that's my site.
We forgot to do is we forgot to have a guest. People want guests.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, you want guests, and then some people say, "Yeah, it's a good idea." And
everyone tell Damien we want guests.
People who want guests are welcome to say they want guests, but not everyone. If you don't want guests, just say,
you're just trying to make the show about you.
Email Damien at his personal email address.
Yeah.
Super cool dude at 1976.com.
Someone should take a work item to go and invite some people.
We will do that.
Okay, let's answer some questions. I didn't have any generic updates this week. We're just working super hard on stuff, 2.0 stuff. So go to the GitHub repos to find more. I've been playing a lot with Razor Pages because I'm converting like a full If you do file new MVC app with identity and you get like a bazillion lines of code, I'm converting that site right now into Razor pages, which is great. We're finding a whole bunch of stuff, little tweaks we can make here and there to make the stuff better. And if you want to look at the progress of that, you can see that on my GitHub repo, Damien Edwards /Razor Pages sample, for those who are interested in playing along and with the Razor Pages stuff.
Can I make a suggestion? Since you now have a fan who made a website for you called Why Does Damien Wear Two Watches, I don't see there's any reason why you couldn't have Razor Pages sample.whydoesdamienwear2watches.com. You could use that for all your demos code now.
Okay, moving on. We've got some questions here. I was a little disappointed that the website was a static HTML file and not an ASP.NET Core site, but it's just a YouTube page, so I guess that's okay. Would you please tell us more, if this is from here, tell us more about the transitioning Kestrel to pipelines and span? I think I've really said everything that there is to say about that. I mean, the work's ongoing. It's being done effectively to codify all the crazy code that we wrote in Kestrel 1x, so we're turning those into sort of first-class APIs over time. In conjunction with the core FX, with the .NET team, essentially. It's a full stack effort, requires changes in the compiler and the jitter and the GC and all types of stuff. It's a big effort. So that's going on. And then we're also doing the ability to swap in different transports to Kestrel so that we can have Kestrel not just depend on libuv, but we could have it use system.net.sockets. We could have it use registered IO on Windows, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's an ongoing effort. And we've hit our perf goals that we wanted to for 2.0 already. So that's going well. I guess I'll keep saying. What else?
Someone had said something about zero bug bounce or something on...
That's an old term that we used to use, ZBB. We haven't used it.
What is that? Because they were trying to get me to retweet it, and I didn't feel I wanted to retweet that yet.
When I first started at Microsoft 7 years ago, ZBB was basically it's a checkpoint along the milestone to shipping, whereby you would, after you had set a bar, like a triage bar for bugs. So it's like, we're not going to fix any bugs that don't meet these conditions. Then this severity, this type of impact, this risk, et cetera, et cetera. You have your set of bugs, and then there is a point in time in the schedule where you have no bugs because you've had no bugs come in that meet the current bug bar, and you've fixed all the ones that were outstanding. That's called the ZBB, or the zero bug bounce. And then back in the day, when a bug was marked fixed, that would remove it from contention for ZBB, but there was a second milestone, which was ZRB, which was zero resolved bugs, which was when a bug had been fixed but had not been verified by a tester. When we used to have separate testers, they would move from like that metric into the resolve metric, and then we would wait for there to be no bugs that had been fixed but not yet verified. We don't use those terms anymore. We don't. I mean, on our team, we don't follow that engineering practice anymore, so we don't really have a ZBB, other than, there will be some time when we don't have bugs. It's usually about 2 minutes before we shipped, and then we find all the other bugs. So yeah, I don't know. What team was it the person was from that they were referring to ZBB, if you're able to disclose that? Was it a Visual Studio based team? Scott, we can't hear you.
I'm like talking to myself and telling you all kinds of great, interesting stuff. Karel Zickman.
Oh, so he's from the framework team, CoreFX.
So he tweeted. He tweeted, loading Twitter. .NET Core is around the corner, driving to 2.0 bugs by 5.10. Come help.
Right. So you've given him an audio retweet.
Yes.
It's basically a big long list of milestones and be part of the thing, and basically tagging everyone. It's a call to, it's a rallying call.
Right. So I think that he's using the term to refer to the date at which we plan to branch for stabilization and shutdown of the release following that, the 2.0, one of the 2.0 releases. So, and he's used the term ZBB. So yeah, that's where that came from. Anyway, I haven't heard the term in a while. Saqib, if I'm saying that right, sorry. Saqib Javed. Saqib, is that how you say that? Okay.
SAQ.
Javed, yep. IB, yep. Is mentioned last time we had a discussion about mapping, and that your team is thinking about having something out of the box. Yeah, so I kind of just let that rest for a week. Sometimes it's just nice to let those things simmer for a bit. We haven't had any activity on the issue since the last stand-up. We had a little bit, but not much. Right now, my current headspace is in, it's not critical to our next release, and so we won't do it. It's my current thought. We can take more time to investigate alternative ideas. Someone mentioned ideas around model binding to interfaces, and there's a few other ideas that will enable us to at least mitigate some parts of the initially perceived gap in our offering that we looked to something like object mapping to be able to help address. I'm still not convinced we can get rid of all of them, simply because even if you get the data into your action method and you protect against mass assignment there by way of some other more targeted model binding system, you often still have to then take that object and then shove it into EF or make a service call and map it to a different object model. And we don't really have anything in the system to do that. Now, there are object mappers out there that integrate deeply with Link, so you can actually compose ORMs that use Link with the object mappers and do really types of crazy things, and we don't have anything like that. But you could argue that we don't need anything like that. We can just say, hey, out of the box, you have to do left-hand, right-hand code, and if you want to not do this, go off and look at object mappers. But as I said, for the next release, we're probably just not going to do anything, and we'll continue to look at other ways of mitigating that. Beyond 2.0, it'll take a little bit more time to look at it. Someone asked about app domains, William. I can tell you that app domain is coming back in Net Standard 2, but it's not coming back as the full fidelity app domain API. It's coming back for compat reasons because it has a bunch of methods on it that are very useful, like give me the list of all the assemblies that are currently loaded. It also has the place where you wire up global exception handling. What we are not bringing back in .NET Core is the facility to use app domains for isolation, so that you can have separate app domains that have different versions of assemblies loaded in them, and then unload the app domain and have those assemblies be unloaded. That does not exist in .NET Core. There is a separate mechanism in .NET Core specifically for doing assembly loading in isolation, but it is nowhere near as friendly as app domain, is my understanding. It's called like isolation load context or something, and someone who's watching who knows can ping me and tell me what the real name is. We use it in some places in ASP.NET Core and in our toolchain, but it's not very well known. But it does exist. There is a way to do it. It's just a little more convoluted to users, I believe. Let's have a look. Oh, look, and Mr. Fowler is watching. Assembly load context. That's the name of the feature. So if you want to learn about how to load assemblies in isolation in .NET Core, look up assembly load context. Thank you, David. Question, explain the perf increase with three question marks. I'm not quite geeky, Sacramento. I'm not quite sure what perf increase you are referring to. So I'm sorry, I can't, unless he was referring to system.bin. David is saying that there's a doc on how to use assembly load context, and I'm sure in another 20 seconds he'll paste the link into my window and then we can share it. What else? Looking for questions. Not seeing any other questions. Is it safe to use Kestrel for a static site? The current guidance, this is from I am so bad at name pronunciation. Alejandro? Is it safe to use Kestrel for a static site? The current guidance is still to put Kestrel behind a reverse proxy of some description, whether it's IIS, using the ASP.NET Core module, or Nginx, or Apache. We are still working through a number of fixes to Kestrel and features that will enable us to remove that recommendation. So right now, you can use it to serve static files if you have ASP.NET Core running and you have the static file middleware, but we still recommend that you put a reverse proxy in front of it. And yes, Fowler just tweeted me the link. It's some ridiculously long link, and we'll get that to people somehow because I can't put it in the chat. From Hishamko, any plan to add tag helpers programmatically? We are adding a new feature in 2.0 called tag helper components. Tag helper components are effectively the ability to add tag helpers through the DI system. However, they are not fully fledged tag helpers. Tag helpers have to participate in view compilation, which is why you can't just put them in DI. They have to be declared in the page, in the Razor file itself, so that the code generation that occurs when we compile a Razor view knows about those tag helpers. So there's two phases to the app. There's there's the compiling of the C# files, and then there's compiling of the CSHTML files, and they're a totally different mechanism. which is why we can't just have tag helpers injected at runtime. And so tag helper components are going to enable you to have some certain types of tag helper-like things light up inside the application automatically by way of them being in DI. Specifically, the two places that we're going to enable in 2.0, tag helper components that want to run as part of the head tag and those that want to run as part of the body tag. And what that will mean is that specifically libraries that are designed to inject diagnostics into ASP.NET Core apps, so Mini Profiler, Glimpse, Application Insights, etc., they will be able to inject JavaScript, or anything they like actually, into the emitted output of a page just by virtue of them being configured in the ASP.NET Core app using the normal sort of dependency injection system, without you having to do anything in your HTML. So that's the specific reason that we're adding that in 2.0, but that same capability will very likely be enhanced over time to add more and more features. But they're not fully fledged tag helpers that you could then go, you can't add custom elements, for example, purely via DI in 2.0. Any news from the EF Core team? Lots of it, just not in this stand-up. We could get them on again though to talk about EF Core.
We have them come on next week. We can set that
Sure.
up if you're okay with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, we'll do that.
Can I start using Kestrel without Nginx in production, or should you wait? You should wait, as I said before. Is NetStandard meant to pull .NET Core back in line with the full framework? If that's the end goal, why code against the full framework going forward? That's from Heinrich. Yeah, effectively, it's I wouldn't phrase it quite that way. .NET Standard is intended to represent the common base class library contract across all flavors of .NET, whether they be the main ones that we talk about, .NET Framework, .NET Core, and Xamarin, but also the extended ones, so things like Unity. And John, help me out. What are the other ones?
Sorry, I was doing something else.
John,
we're setting up the EF thing right
yeah,
now.
we're moving.
TCB.
Okay. So .NET Standard, yeah, is to represent that common base across all the .NET platforms. And indeed, if you want to create shared .NET code moving forward that can load on any of the .NET platforms, your target should be .NET Standard. There will obviously be cases where you want to write .NET code that can do platform-specific things, in which case you want to take advantage of APIs that only exist in .NET Framework, or only exist in .NET Core, or only exist in Xamarin, in which case you have to write .NET code that targets those platforms. But majorly speaking, you want to think about targeting .NET Standard first, and then then just platform light up by targeting those when you need to. Question: why is there no localized tag helper officially out of the box? From Hishamko, because we haven't done the work yet. In fact, I found the issue that I logged like 2 years ago where we spec'd out a localized tag helper, but we just never did the work. It got scoped out, and we didn't scope it back in for 2.0. So it's spec'd out. We have a pretty good idea of how it would work. We just haven't done the work. So right now, you still have to use the localized API. How do you get TE? I don't know what that means. Sorry, Tom. Shannon, I see a design issue that was recently created for returning observables in SignalR. Is that going to make it into 1.0? This is from Shannon Skinner, issue 324 on the SignalR repo. Yeah, so David and a couple of the SignalR devs right now are investigating how hubs are going to work under the covers in SignalR. And we're looking at some of the extended programming patterns around hubs that typically show up. Like when you want to be able to send a message through a hub from a non-hub origin. So for example, if you're in an MVC controller and you want to send messages out to people who are subscribed to a hub, how do you do that? In SignalR today, you do that via taking an iHub context. But we're looking at observable and things like channel as a potential underpinning or first-class exchange sort of type for doing those things. So we're just experimenting with that right now. This is kind of the last week. This is why SignalR is quite a far way out yet. And trying to figure out what the right pattern for that is. Any plans on integrating GraphQL into ASP.NET Core? And if not, what's your opinion of GraphQL? No, and I have absolutely no opinion of GraphQL. I couldn't tell you the first thing about GraphQL except that it's probably a query language for querying some type of social graph. So sorry, I am not up to speed on GraphQL. Brendan asks, is there many relationships using collections are going to come with EF Core 2? I think so, but we'll let the EF team answer that next week. I believe it is.
GraphQL lets you make a projection like you just describe what you want, like customer, curly brace, name, birthday, whatever, and you just describe the shape of it, and then it gives you that. It talks to your API. So if you have a graph, it's like a
it's a declarative query language.
It's a declarative query language, like the way OData was like, yeah, put a bunch of crazy stuff on the URL, and we'll give you back some
has to understand it. Does the API have to be GraphQL aware?
Right.
I see. Okay, so it's like OData, but it's GraphQL.
Yeah.
GraphQL.org.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Someone had a question. Okay. Any news on .NET Native? It continues to be worked on. We don't have any announcements or plans or schedules for .NET Native. So there are two flavors of .NET Native. There's a .NET Native that UWP uses, which obviously is already shipped and continues to get improvements. And then there is .NET Native, as we previewed it a year and a half ago, in the scope of .NET Core, which doesn't exist yet and is based on a thing called Core RT, which you can go up and see on the .NET GitHub repo, .NET/Core RT. Which we have eventual plans, eventual goals, I should say, not plans, that's too strong a word. We have eventual goals of lighting up basically the entire .NET Core platform on .NET Native, so that you could, native compile any .NET Core app, and it would then give you an output that runs on Core RT. We don't have any timelines for that right now, so I can pretty much safely say it's not going to be this year. But yeah, the work continues. There was something that I saw announced yesterday, though. We did get a check-in. The JIT team has been working on improvements to the JIT, including an multi-phase JIT, which is a really big deal. I saw that go through Twitter yesterday, I think. There's a PR out right now to the Core CLR repo, I think, where they've the first interpretation of that. So the idea of a multi-phase JIT would be that when the app first starts, it can run with an interpretive JIT. Which means that rather than having to wait for a full assembly to JIT, like Roslyn takes a very long time to JIT, because it's huge, you could have it just be interpreted on the fly, which means that you can get the app up and running much, much, much quicker, while in the background, a normal Ryu JIT is taking place, which can then be sort of swapped in place with the bytecode that was generated by the interpreted JIT. And then you can even have a further JIT taking place, maybe a cross-gen JIT or something later on, that can then be supplemented in. So, but the idea of a multi-phase JIT is that you do the cheapest JIT first that might produce the worst code, like the worst performing code, but you can get it going quicker. So it's really, really good for fast app start, and then you supplant in better versions of the code as it gets generated in the background by your multi-phase JIT. So that's a super exciting development. We're particularly excited for that for ASP.NET Core apps, because while you're doing development with Visual Studio or VS Code and you're making code changes and you save the file, you go back to the browser and hit F5, you sit there and you wait for the app to shut down, start up again, all the stuff that wasn't JITted to be re-JITted. That loop could potentially get vastly improved by something like a multi-phase JIT. So that's really cool to see those type of things start to be trickling into the framework. What's going on with Razor Evolution? That's from Codename Unknown 1. So Razor Evolution is the codename that we gave to the rewriting of the Razor parser that we're doing now during 2.0 to facilitate the Razor pages work. So the rewriting of Razor that we did for ASP.NET Core, we weren't particularly happy with. And when we set out to do Razor pages, we wanted to go back and basically fix it, make it more extensible by design, so that we could build Razor pages on top of new primitives that customers themselves could use to extend the Razor language. So you could actually do things like create new directives based on a structured set of known primitives that directors must adhere to. And there's a whole sort of long string of those things that we've done now. That is Razor Evolution. And as a result, we've moved some things around in the Razor assemblies, and you'll see the result of that when you start looking at 2.0 apps. There's some new assemblies in places, and some code is moved if you get down to that level. For the vast majority of people, you won't know anything's different. But under the covers, we have made a bunch of changes to Razor for the better, I hope. Christian asks, will Razor Evolution make it much easier to integrate Razor into other stuff like email templating, Nancy, etc., with proper tooling? Yes and no. So tooling is a specific issue that we are trying to address Again, to get Razor Pages tooling to work properly in VS, we had to make a bunch of changes in the VS tooling experience. And we hate that every time we change Razor, we have to update Visual Studio. Like, it's just not scalable. It means there's a long pole from the time that we decide we want to make a Razor feature change, a language change, to when you see that light up in Visual Studio. So we're fundamentally changing all that architecture in 2.0, such that the piece that understands Razor and generates the code and pushes that back into the editor so you get colorization and IntelliSense is now effectively an out-of-band component that our team owns rather than the tooling team. We build it in conjunction with them. And then over time, the plan is that that component will be able to load the core pieces of Razor itself, including the Razor host, out of the running project, rather than use a predetermined version of it that ships with the tools, which is what happens today. That would then facilitate things like, oh, Nancy has a custom Razor host. I can open a Nancy project in Visual Studio. The Razor tooling experience finds the custom Nancy host inside your project, loads it up, connects it to the editor, and now you're getting IntelliSense for the Nancy Razor host instead of the MVC Razor host. Likewise for an email-based templating Razor thing. So we are starting to do the work to facilitate those type of things. We're not going to get there over the line in 2.0, but we have started on the journey. Whether the Razor evolution part by itself makes it easier for someone like Nancy to integrate, I don't think so. Like, I think Nancy wants us to go further, and frankly, I want us to go further too. A lot of the things that people associate with Razor today aren't actually Razor. They're part of the MVC view engine. So things like partials, the layout, the way that layout and section and body and all those type of things work, they're nothing to do with Razor. Razor is just the syntax. Those are all to do with composition features in the view engine. And we have ideas over time to introduce new composition features that are more tied to things like tag helpers rather than tied specifically to the MVC view engine. And I think when that happens, you'll find it might be easier to lift and shift those things, because they're part of Razor themselves, or most of it, onto other web frameworks that have decided they want to use Razor for their templating. So Christian, hopefully that answers your question. And Hisham plus one that as well. Maher asks, is CentOS 7.2 supported for ASP.NET Core? Most of the docs show CentOS 7.1. I don't know. That'd be a question for .NET Core. We derive our support from .NET Core rather than ourselves. If someone wants to look that up while I'm talking, that would be great. Chad asks, any concerns about multi-tag helpers injected and messing up order of load? The tag helper system supports multiple tag helpers already, and there is an order parameter on tag helpers. So any tag helper can change its order so that it can decide it wants to run later or earlier on any given element. That's baked in from the beginning, so I don't think that's an issue. Although any system that has ordering where multiple people from different factions are participating ultimately has the problem of, if someone really, really wants to run last, but two people really, really want to run last, then you're always going to have that problem. Like, we can't solve that generically. It's up to the developer to compose those things in. Let's have a look.
I looked up in the doc, or on the downloads. It doesn't look like CentOS 7.1 is the latest.
Okay, so I would assume that 7.2 is coming as part of the 2.0 support then, unless it may be even coming as part of the next servicing release for 1X. So Luke asks, my custom tag helper that works makes all the design time tag helper and IntelliSense crash. Well, that's not good. Sorry, Luke. I'm assuming that he is using the Razor language service extension that I think we showed last week, which is what enables the tag helper IntelliSense in Visual Studio 2017 right now. If so, could you send us feedback? Use the send feedback in Visual Studio to log that issue with all your details. And if you can point us to your tag helper, the source code, that would be massively helpful. And we will see if we can get the right people to look at that and figure out what's going on for you.
And just so people know, like when you do the send feedback inside Visual Studio, that can do things like capture the state. It can it doesn't just like log a bug. It lets us troubleshoot it.
Yeah, that's why we specifically, if you have a problem in VS, please use that feature, because it'll capture all the versions you're using. It'll capture status of the product at the time and all types of wonderful stuff like that. And my scroll window just went away, so let me see where we were. So Hisham asks about ResX. While ResX needs to be compiled by MS Build, how can we add localization culture dynamically at runtime? That's a very specific question to do with, I think, ASP.NET Core's localization feature. We've worked with Hisham quite a bit. with Hisham quite a bit on this. I'm not quite sure exactly what he's asking here. You can obviously add cultures dynamically at runtime. You can't necessarily add a set of resources for a culture at runtime, which is thinking what he might be asking. I'd have to think about that, actually. I'm not sure whether you can with Resource Manager at all. Our default implementation uses Resource Manager. Resource Manager has a way of working. It assumes that resx files were there at source time. They then get compiled into
I did a lot of that
assemblies.
stuff 10 years ago, and I don't remember any ability to do that without causing a recompile.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a way to dynamically load. I mean, so there is a thing called a resource reader. That is a type that exists. You can now, with a resource reader, you can read a compiled resource assembly at runtime. I don't know how you then make an instance of Resource Manager use it. I don't think that's a thing. If it is, someone please point it out to us, but I'm not aware of that. You could always write your own. Ooh, a new amiibo.
It just came in the mail.
Very nice.
My 8-year-old was like, or 9. I don't know how old he is. One of the kids.
One of the kids.
One of the children that lives here.
The
just
younger one. Yes.
Apparently, that's pretty awesome.
Okay. NVS about multi-tier JIT. Great. Question: SDK 1.0 using Mono on Linux targeting Net461 broke .NET test. Is Mono on Linux still considered as supported? This is from Giovanni. So technically, Mono as part of the .NET Core SDK was never supported. Like, it was never something that was on our supported list. You can't ring Microsoft support and say, hey, it doesn't work when I use it with Mono. You can target Net461, obviously, and because Mono emulates Net461, you can try and make stuff work. You can compile a 461 app on Linux using the SDK, and then you can Mono run that app. I don't think .NET Run that app would work because it can't run the exe. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't work because it's not a first-class supported thing. That said, it doesn't mean that we wouldn't accept the work or do the work if necessary, if it's a small amount of work to facilitate those type of things. It's just that it's not part of the supported matrix, and so it will often get deprioritized under other things. Let's have a look. Has .NET Framework 4X effectively and perhaps hastily been promoted to be the shape of Net Standard 2.0 for commercial reasons rather than a methodical build-up of the fresh new API? This is from Mr. Mike. That's a great question. That's better a question targeted at the .NET team, specifically Imo Landworth, who's the program manager who heads that effort. It's better to think that .NET Standard 2 is actually based on .NET Framework more than it was based on the idea of adding more API to .NET Standard. So what we effectively did was we looked at Xamarin. After we bought Xamarin, we looked at all the various Xamarin platforms. We looked at Mono. We looked at .NET Framework, and we said, what are the libraries that target these things? What APIs do these libraries, what is the intersection of the APIs that libraries targeting these platforms often call? Basically, if you would, and we actually did a whole bunch of analysis on this. They wrote tools, they scanned apps, they did all types of crazy stuff. And that brought them to a set of APIs that were very clearly nearly always used by these types of apps, like desktop apps, server apps, mobile apps, no matter what type of Unity apps, doesn't matter what type of .NET you're running on, these are the APIs that we should be able to support everywhere and that people are actually using, right? Then there were some sort of the next phase, which were fringe APIs that the majority of those apps were using, or maybe less of those apps, but that we could conceivably make work on all the platforms. And then we did a whole bunch of analysis. This is all up on GitHub. The whole process was somewhat transparent. And that constituted the set of APIs that we wanted to bless as .NET Standard 2. Whereas the process for .NET Standard 1 was completely sort of retrospective. We just looked at all the portable class stuff that was out there already, which had been built under a completely different set of guidelines and a completely different sort of approach. And we kind of retconned Net Standard 1X from the existing PCL profiles, plus the addition of .NET Core, which was really born within that era. .NET Standard 2 and thus .NET Core 2 is born of this new era where we have these major .NET platforms that we're trying to unify with a common base. So I wouldn't phrase it as we said, oh, let's just kind of make .NET 4.6.1 this. It was already that. It turned out that it already had all the APIs that all the other platforms had tried to emulate or they had ported over. So it naturally was the starting base. Question, is it a bad idea to put a JOT token to cookie for one particular request and then in the middleware copy it to headers? I have no idea. Talk to an identity expert and a security expert about that. I'd have to think about that answer. I'd have to think about that question and talk to people before I answered it. So I'm just going to punt it completely. Would Microsoft? This is a good question from Ryu. This has come up a while ago. Would Microsoft think client-side JavaScript templating language which matches the Razor syntax? No,
We talked about this before.
Yeah, like I mean, years ago. The problem is Razor at its core is C# mixed with HTML.
Right.
So how would we do that in the browser without something like Silverlight?
Well, while that came up, I did look. There are some people that have created. There's JS Razor and Razor JS, which are, and again, just the templating parts. So it's
they're Razor-ish.
They're Razor-ish syntax, but
well, they just use the @ as the delimiter effectively.
Yeah, that kind of. But then they do have some other like similar sorts of like add to escape and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
They have a render partial. They have that kind of thing.
Also, they're actually emulating the same layout primitives as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not Razor specific, but yeah. Okay. No, we don't have any plans to do that. We'd much rather the teams and the companies and folks who are focused on building great client-side templating languages continue to do that, and then we look at ways that we can integrate with those in the best possible way. Everyone seems to have standardized on some type of handlebars / mustache-like syntax for client-side templating. There's also a differentiation between pure templating languages and things like Razor that aren't pure templating. Like Razor is actually a generator. It's actually a code generator. It's not really a templating language. Templating languages like Mustache and Handlebars don't let you just put arbitrary JavaScript in the expressions, right? Which is what Razor lets you do. Razor lets you put any C# in any Razor block. Whereas things that are more typically very focused on templating have their own DSL, have their own sort of object model / templating syntax, so that when you go to like, this is where I want something to be emitted right here, you can't just put a JavaScript expression. You can usually put tokens that represent the current object, which came from a JavaScript object, which you obviously name match, and then they often have named filters or methods that you can add to in the templating engine. So Angular did this, for example, shipped with a bunch, and WPF did a very similar thing as well back in the day. And you could register, you could build and register new expression types and new filter types that would then show up in the templating language, but they weren't just arbitrary code expressions, right? Whereas Razor is that. It's literally just C# and HTML mixed together. So it's much more about code generation than it is about templating. Let's have a look if there's anything else before we run out of time. Not really. Let's have a look. Do you see anything else, guys?
No.
We still need a better way to figure the questions out. There's a lot of
So the only other thing I'd say, there's a bit of a side thread going about the localization stuff. We had planned to do a second localization provider in 2.0. Unfortunately, we had to scope it out due to lack of time and resources, all the usual story. We do have a prototype somewhere. I should look it up, see if it's actually available in a branch somewhere, of using PO files. And if you're not familiar with PO files, I think they came from GNU. Is that right? Did I get? We'll have to look that up. John, can you go look at that for me? I think the PO file system came from GNU.
Oh yeah.
And that's actually a very capable localization sort of format. And one of the problems with .NET localization is that it's not particularly advanced. It doesn't support a lot of the features that you typically look for in a modern localization system. Like, it doesn't have any first-class support for pluralization or complex languages. Like, pluralization is very tricky to do correctly because many languages require you to have different strings for if there's a singular versus a dual versus a 3 versus 7 and 9 versus like some languages get very complicated on that. So you need to have a system that can codify those strings. Resource Manager can't do that. Like, Resource Manager can't do that. Regex can't do that. It's just keys and values. And we would have to invent new APIs. We would have to have an iPluralize string localizer because you need to pass more arguments to the lookup method to know which pluralized string to look up because you need to know what the number is. So we plan to do that. We have a prototype of it, and that it was based on PO files, which is very common. There's a very rich ecosystem of tooling around PO files, which is the other reason we would select it by default. And many other web frameworks support PO files, just typically not on .NET Core, .NET. But we had to scope it out. So I hope to get back to that after 2.0, and I will go and find if that prototype still exists and see if we can't point people to it if they're interested. And a couple of people now saying +1 for PO files. That would be awesome. Okay, That was some
Cool.
dead air right there.
All right.
I think the PO thing though is important though. There's a ton of people using that in the world.
Absolutely, and that's why we chose that one first. I think Orchard has a completely custom localization system and GlobeLoc system, and I believe that they have a PO file provider as well for their system. But we would like to put one in ASP.NET Core proper. So, yeah, cool. I think we should probably end it there.
All right. More
Is Scott like
Scott,
zoned out, or
what are
like
you doing?
Scott would say something insightful here?
He's on
I'm
vacation.
I'm on
sorry.
vacation. No, I was trying to get a node thing to do a heap dump.
Oh well, I'm sorry.
All right, that's okay. Let's do the dramatic zoom out.
Dramatic zoom out.
It's so dramatic.
Dun, dun, dun.
We need posters up there. We need to put some posters in there.
I took them down because people like teased me because I had stuff printed. Well, I didn't print it out, but it was on
Man
the wall.
will wear
but I
two
took them to
watches, but he can't put a poster up.
Yeah.